Hello, Internet. I am beyond giddy to talk with my dear friend and love of my life, Roy Alty, also known as Coach Roy. And he gave an amazing list of suggestions. My favorite one was our top five favorite moments of each other or our time together, which is going to be a future video. But Roy coached basketball for many years. He played in his younger days. Basketball is one of the driving points of a group of friends who are now scattered across the country that come playoff times, we always, even if we haven't been talking in a while, we always have to talk playoffs. So it was relevant with the NBA playoffs this year to talk basketball right now with Roy. Roy, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. Um, yeah, life with two little kids, a 2-year old and a 4-year old. I don't get to sit and watch an entire game that very often, but where the trade off's worth it. It's great. Yeah.
Is And of course there was one point in your life like everything shut down to watch NBA playoffs, the NCAA Final Four. So it's fun to see you grow up. While I, on the other hand, am never going to grow up. So
Yeah, there was a time in my life when everything revolved around basketball. I coached it, I watched it, I lived, ate, breathed it, but you know, life changes and you adjust and you transition, you move.
I mean, basketball was such a fixture in your life that when your wonderful wife planned a surprise weekend for your 30th birthday, we
Yeah.
surprised you at a basketball game. You were coaching, and one of my favorite moments in the world because you are one
Yeah.
of the most fun-loving and personable guys in person, but when coaching basketball and from what I've heard while coaching PE, you can get a little intense. And so it was just kind of fun to see you drop that Coach Roy persona as you were walking across the court and spotted us in the crowd. But when did you start playing basketball?
Oh man, I started playing basketball probably when I was 5, 6. I had a basketball dribble. Um, yeah, we always went to our cousin's house, and he had a hoop and a pool, so we'd spend all day swimming in the pool, playing on the basketball court. Um, yeah, it's just I always found uh, it was like an inner love for it. I always felt calming, relaxing. Dribbling a basketball, shooting. That always had like a zen feeling to me. It made me feel good, feel me centered. You know, so it's never went away.
And did you know from an early age you wanted to coach at some level, or was that just something that happened once you were teaching?
I did. It was probably when I was in ninth grade. Ninth grade, I had a basketball coach. Rob Earl was his name, and he really he made me want to be better, and he made me realize the potential I had, and um, yeah, if he really changed things for me. Yeah, it was after being with him that I realized that basketball was going to be something that was forever entwined with my life. Hi. Did you want to come up? Yeah. We're going to say hi. Say hi.
Hi.
We can't see you right now. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, did you lose me?
Well, I see me, but I don't see you. I don't know what the heck.
Weird. I have us both right now.
I don't know what happened. Oh, well. You going to say hi too?
I can't see him.
Yeah, it's Reverend Dilcox. We can't see him. I don't know why.
Did it change at all?
When it said you were recording, I said okay, and then it changed. I don't know why.
Weird. Anything?
It's just us on the screen, not you, which is unfortunate.
That is unfortunate.
Is it?
Because I have you guys and me on the screen.
I can't see him.
Screen?
I don't know
I'm
how to...
strawberry.
Oh. I hope you got that.
Yes, I did indeed.
Yeah, he got you tooting. Yeah.
Dad, who is it?
It's Reverend Dilcox, and I can't see him. I don't know why. Can we pause the recording and try to?
So were you, when you were playing in high school, were you like an on the court coach in practice guy as well?
I can hear you.
Yeah, it took a little while for that skill to develop,
What?
but
No,
that probably came more so when I was a sophomore. I was more of a vocal leader. Yeah.
That would make sense as a freshman. It's kind of hard to be that vocal type of leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, we grew up in small towns, so there aren't a lot of people.
No. Yeah.
Your team was really small, right?
We basically, if you showed up, you made the team. Yeah. Yeah. So it was far different than majority of people and their experiences.
Yeah, and that was me for lacrosse. I think like 2 people got cut every year for lacrosse. And unfortunately, I hit 5'8" and 200 pounds at 13. So by the time I'm a junior and senior in high school, I've got all these guys who are so much larger than me. And I ended up becoming more of a player coach than an actual player. And I actually got offered to coach the JV lacrosse team the year after I graduated high school, but couldn't work it out with my schedule.
I never
But it
knew
was-
that. That's awesome.
Yeah, the coach had gotten fired for throwing a chair at an athlete, and he was never a good coach anyway. He was just kind of well liked by certain people in a school system. We won't get too much in that, but you're familiar with that type of situation.
Yeah, a lot of politics in sports.
But of course, like these were all my little brother's classmates, and a couple of them really pitched for me, and feelers were sent out to see if I'd be interested in, but there's no way I could make it work with a retail schedule, 3 lacrosse games a week and multiple practices. Just doesn't work for that. I don't know that I would have the same coaching persona you did. I don't know that I could be snapping clipboards.
Listen, that clipboard was on its way out anyway. That wasn't entirely my fault, you know. I'm competitive. I like to win. I like to have, you know, I can take losing if we play our best. You know what I mean? That to me feels like an okay type of scenario. Is when we don't play our best and we lose it. It's makes me feel like, you know, I got to do my job better. I got to figure something out to put players in a position to be their most successful in.
When I can remember from living with you, if the game went well and you guys lost, you'd be hot about it for a little bit, but you got over it pretty quickly. But if there was an effort thing, you'd wake up the next morning still hot about it. The night we surprised you, you only had like 7 girls available for that game. And
Yeah.
it's impossible for me to be objective because I was clearly rooting for you, but the officials were bad and they were not on your side. We thought early you were getting tossed out of that game. And so you were hot, but you quickly got over it and you're like, oh, they're running tomorrow, but what can you do? You got 7 girls and 2 of them are playing varsity that night. So
yeah, you know, that's, you know, as a JV coach, that's how it goes. You know, you just play with what you got, do your best, and, you know, try to develop players, you know, to get better.
Do you miss coaching?
I do. I do. There's a lot of times where I really miss the interaction with the players. I miss the environment, you know. But coaching takes a lot of time away from the family. And, you know, when I stopped coaching and spent more time at home, and I don't want to give up those evenings and those times, you know, coaching basketball, but you miss, you know, your kids growing up and the memories, and yeah, and I'm okay with, you know, missing basketball.
That's awesome. Could you see coaching the kids as they grow up?
I could. I've been a firm believer from day one that I will not push my children to play a sport that I love. if they get into it and it's organic and they love it, that's great. I will be supportive of that, but I don't want to make them follow my passions. I want them to follow their own.
That's awesome. So you're saying if they become cricket players, you'd be the biggest cricket dad there is?
I absolutely would. I would invest a lot of time researching and learning cricket.
I've played pickup cricket, and I even having been explained by someone who'd played, I don't understand cricket. So good luck to that if they become passionate about cricket, but it's a very beloved sport worldwide. So
Yeah, you gotta watch out for those wickets in cricket.
so since you're more interested in family, are you saying if you get offered the recently vacant Celtics or Duke jobs, you're turning them down?
I'd be highly unqualified for them, but at this stage of my life, I would, because when you're in the NBA, your college is year-round, 365 days, and you gain a lot of opportunities, but it also you miss out on a lot of family time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you say you'd be underqualified, but Jason Kidd is severely unqualified and proved in multiple stops he can't do the job, but he's reportedly one of the front runners for that Celtics job. So
Yeah, I'll never understand that part of it.
I'm a huge Matt Barnes fan as a player, so I have such a strong distaste for Jason Kidd post playing career. So
yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
no, you said you don't get much time to watch. Have you watched much of the playoffs at all, though?
I have watched a little bit. It's mostly the Blazers games. Being in, Oregon, I spent some time watching the Blazers games.
It's unfortunate that Dame had no help last night for them.
Oh my God, I don't understand it. I don't. You had Covington missing 2 dunks. Carmelo Anthony dribbling off his foot, CJ McCollum stepping out of bounds. It's just they should apologize to him sincerely, because man, he had such a historic and unforgettable game, and they weren't there to support him at all.
Yeah, it's especially unfortunate on the McCollum thing. Like, he should know better. Like, of all the guys on the team, like, that is the running mate. That is the unit they were putting together, was the 2 of those guys. And that's just such a giant mistake from a player who you'd expect better from.
Oh my God, absolutely.
And I don't think it should be understated that the Nuggets blew an 8-point lead at the last minute of regulation last night too. And how are you not fouling Dame on the court before he can get into a 3-point shot?
I don't know. And the one time they set a screen and he came off and Djokovic didn't come out and show on the screen, they give him a wide open look. I'm thinking, what are you doing? I mean, that should, to me, you think it's when a guy like Damian Lillard at the end of the game, he has a history of being hot and hitting big shots, that, if you're guarding him and somebody sets a screen, you just tag them and you roll with them and you just force him off the 3-point line, make him shoot a mid-range jumper, make him take a layup, but don't give the guy a 3.
This wasn't like the situation years ago when out of a called play, Duncan hit a 3, I believe, to tie, and then one to win against the Suns, because Duncan doesn't shoot threes. I think that was the first 3-point he shot that season was in the playoffs. But at the same time, you kind of knew it was going in. But you don't let Dame win or tie a game on a 3.
No, you don't. You, if any, you foul him or you double team him. You make him give the ball up. Somebody else has got to beat you.
Yeah, exactly. I think they should have been playing Dame the way the Lakers and Grizzlies played Curry in the play-in games. They're just, especially when there's no one who can beat you on that Portland team. Yes, you're going to pick up the double team before the half court, and you might bring a triple. Or, I mean, with the Grizzlies, sometimes they're throwing 4 guys on staff. So,
I mean, whatever he did do, he just not. I mean, And it shows the way that, his other team didn't step up to help him in the end of the game. As a coach, that should be eye-opening, that anybody else, give anybody else. And if you lose to McCollum hitting a three or Mello or somebody else making a play, then you live with that. But you can't live with Dame giving those wide open looks.
Now, the story of Melo beating the Nuggets by hitting a game-ending three would be huge.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That would have been huge. Yeah.
Well, it's crazy being in Colorado. The Melo hate is real, and I don't really understand it. He played well for them. They didn't give him a lot. He went to a team he thought could give him more. That didn't give him more, but
And you look at the Nuggets. The Nuggets have been fairly good ever since that trade. They got a lot from the Knicks in that, and that has made them good for a lot of years.
And it's so interesting because, I mean, during Melo's Nugget run, he was one of the most popular jerseys. I was living in Orlando for a portion of that, and I saw as many Melo jerseys in Orlando as I would see Kobe jerseys at the time. It was insane, like how over Melo was, and he wanted to go home. He wanted to go back to New York, and you can't blame a man for that.
Nope, you can't.
Especially as we've learned, there's no loyalty in sports. I mean, we saw what the Celtics did to Isaiah a couple years ago. Like, there's no loyalty. Like, the loyalty is to you and your brand.
And that's the thing is, if fans get so upset about that. They want players to be loyal, but their organization is not loyal at all. You got some owners that are only loyal to, making sure that they make money and they don't care about winning. And you've got other organizations that want to win and, don't care about players or anything like that.
And
So,
we all love a story of a Duncan or a Dirk who plays their whole career in a team, but those are so few and far between that the teams give that loyalty.
oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah, you're 100% correct on that.
and I think honestly, unless it's in one of those going to be in the top 20 conversation, it's understandable from a team you're not going to give that loyalty to as much as you would like that team to. I mean, not every player is going to be Duncan or Kobe, who stayed with the entire time with the Lakers. And that's okay. That's what sports is. Like, the off season for sports is sometimes as exciting as the regular season because of all these transactions.
Oh, absolutely. Players getting traded, draft picks getting traded. It's like, basketball is exciting even in the off season because you never know your team. Like, look at the Brooklyn Nets. They weren't in playoff contention, and now everybody expects them to win a title, even though I don't think they will. But
I think it's going to be hard for them to get through that Bucks team.
I agree. I 100% agree. I mean, Durant, Harden, and Kyrie have only played like 10 regular season games together. I don't think they're going to have the chemistry to beat a Bucks team that has been, fairly much together, except for the addition of Drew Holiday.
And the Drew Holiday edition, I think, is really the reason they are going to win. Like, what a great addition that was. I'm glad to see Drew Holiday go from that, like, maybe the most underrated player in the league to getting his flowers, because the stuff he does. I heard someone say, if you think you've got a lockdown defensive player on your team, watch what Drew Holiday does in the fourth quarter, and you'll realize how not locked down your guy is. And I was like, that's true. Holiday just seems to make the best moves on defense and offense. And Giannis honestly didn't have that great of a series against the Heat, and they blew the doors off that, essentially the same team that won the Eastern Conference the year before. So
Yeah, and I trust Drew Holiday more than I do Chris Middleton down the stretch.
yeah, and that's what they've lacked the last couple of years, is that guy who can handle the ball, because Giannis isn't a shooter, so he's not going to affect the game the same way a Curry or a Dame does. He needs someone else to take that burden. And I think this only helps Middleton. Like, Middleton being able to slide into the third spot instead of the second is huge for him and that team. And I like that they said, hey, it doesn't matter what seed we get in the playoffs. We're just going to spend the season experimenting with our defenses.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I mean, because let's face it, as much as I love watching basketball, the regular season's way too long.
There's so many meaningless games in the NBA. I mean, it really doesn't matter. I mean, even in a 7-game series, you can lose 1 or 2 games and you're fine. You can still come out winning. So it's not like, college basketball where you lose and that's it. Your season might be done.
Yeah, it definitely is just probably too much. And especially this year, I know they only play 60 games this year,
Yeah.
but it was a condensed schedule, so many back-to-backs and weird road trips that I get not taking the season seriously. The dangerous part is you see something like the Hawks run they made after promoting Nate McMillan to head coach. That would have maybe gotten them an 8th seed in a regular season, whereas they jumped up to 4th this season.
Yeah,
But-
they're going to beat the Knicks too. There's no way the Knicks are beating them in a 7-game series.
Yeah, well, right now I had to change my recording spot so I could have the game on the television while we talked. And it's a 14-point lead with 7 minutes left in the fourth. So this one is over, and I think Philly is over too. So we will know our Eastern Conference matches here shortly. Oh yeah, Philly might actually just be over. Yeah, so Philly
won. Yeah. Wow. They played well.
Yeah. Of course, Embiid could miss the rest of the playoffs for Philly, which is unfortunate for them because they can't get through either the Bucks or the Nets without Embiid.
And I thought the Nets had probably the best chance. I gave them a slight favorite over the Bucks to come out of the East, in my opinion. But with Embiid hurt, there's no way they don't stand a chance.
Yeah, they really don't. Which is unfortunate because I think if he doesn't do something in Philly with this team, we might see the end of Doc's coaching career because he stunk the bed in LA. In Boston, they were competitive for 3 years where they were title contenders. But with that team, how could they not be title contenders? So
yeah.
And honestly, he stunk in Orlando for the most part before he went to Boston. So
I think he's a good coach as far as he's going to make your team better. But there's just something about him. When it comes to the big games and when you have to win, he just always seems to come up a little bit short a lot of time.
I think, yeah. And there's something to be said about being able to make in-game adjustments. And it's easy for us to sit there and wonder why in game 4, when Embiid goes down, Simmons isn't playing the 5.
That's a good point. I don't do that.
Instead, they've just got 5 guys passing the ball around at the 3-point line with occasionally Harris driving. And it's interesting that would be the move you'd make instead of letting Simmons cook in the paint, where Simmons is considerably better because no one fears his 3-point shot.
You're right. I mean, he's not going to kill you from 3. So you get him a post-up game, let him go to work or let him distribute.
He was in foul trouble, but I've always liked coaches that when their star is in foul trouble, they make them play through it.
I absolutely, especially in the playoffs. You gotta trust your guys that they're gonna get it done and be smart about it.
Now, 35-year-old Dwight being in foul trouble, I get why you pull him off because when Dwight was the most dominant player in the NBA, he did not get calls go his way. So old coming off the bench Dwight is not getting calls going his way. Not that 35 is old. We are in that age bracket, and I'm exactly the same age as Dwight. So, but I couldn't play playoff minutes, and I definitely would not get the respect from the rest of it.
Yeah, my body couldn't handle that.
Now, with the Embiid injury going down, the person I feel the worst for is Danny Green because, I mean, he could have won 3 championships in a row with 3 different teams, which is insane.
That is insane. Danny Green, the North Carolina guy, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think Danny Green is on his way out. I feel like he's his I mean, his skill set was shooting the three, and he is. I felt like this last year in his Lakers, and he moved on. I thought, his career was slowly coming to an end.
Yeah, knowing that what Philly needed was someone who could play effective minutes when Embiid went off the court and shooters, I was kind of shocked that they picked up Green along with Dwight. Like Dwight made sense. This is his role now. Maybe he's going to play 15 minutes as your backup center. And some nights you're going to get games where he picks up the fouls and you live with that because he's going to make the difference in the game coming off the bench, not letting a second unit score. But Danny Green isn't the shooter he was, even in Toronto.
Yeah, I agree.
And you don't need guys who can't shoot the ball around Simmons.
Listen, when is Ben Simmons going to take his game seriously and learn to shoot a jumper?
I don't know. And the fact that he's hit, I don't know what his stats are tonight, but as of game 4, he'd only hit 2 free throws and he hit both those in game 4, which was an interesting thing because in one of the NBA groups I'm in, I guess the only NBA group I'm in, someone posted the question, wait, can you really foul the guy without the ball intentionally? And I was like, man, how old am I versus how young you are that you don't realize like how this theory has been around for so long now.
Yeah, and to me, it's just, I mean, that's what separates, in my opinion, like the Ben Simmons to like the Kobe's and the LeBrons. You know what I mean? Like those guys, if they went into an off season knowing they had a hole in their game, that's what they did, and they came back the next season and that hole was not there.
Yeah, well, you hear stories about Kobe being in a visiting arena and being in that court the morning before by himself and taking all kinds of shots, and then players talking about watching him do that and then watching him hit those same shots in the game that night. That I think Kobe, problems aside, that work ethic was so top notch. And it's interesting. I heard someone say that LeBron James might be the most popular player of this era, but that Steph Curry was the most important in just the way he's changed the game. And for good and bad, I see some guys shooting those long threes that should not be shooting those long threes. And then guys who you don't think should be, who just nail them. And I'm like, man, the amount that Curry's game has stretched the floor is crazy. And it's only going to get bigger because much like we see guys who obsess over shots because they grew up watching Kobe do it, we're going to see this next generation of players, and it started already. Looking at Trae Young, who loved Curry, like that was his idol. We're going to see this generation coming up that's just shooting shots regularly from the half court line, and that's insane.
Yeah, it is. You talk about a guy who's revolutionized the game of basketball. And the thing is like, there's something about Curry. You watch him play. Klay Thompson hits a three, and everybody's like, "Yay!" Curry hits a three, and the arena goes electric. There's something about how he plays and shoots, and that swagger, that intangible he brings to the game, that really electrifies the arena.
Yeah, for a lot of young players, the long three is the same as what the dunk used to be.
Oh yeah.
Occasionally I'll see a dunk in the game, and I even growing up, I mean, Sean Kemp having been my favorite player as a kid, like obviously I love the dunk and the block, and then having lived in Orlando for the Dwight Eastern Conference Championship, I love the dunk and the block. But sometimes I think Ja Morant had one in game 2 of that series or maybe it was 3, and he went for like the 360 dunk in the play, and yes, he was on the fast break, but I'm like, I get it. It must have been game 3 because the home crowd, but I get it. You're young. You want to get the home crowd fired up while you're down 7, but just dunk.
Don't mess it up.
And he's so phenomenal. Like I didn't think he would have messed that up, but like you don't want to put that chance there.
Yeah.
Just throw it down.
You made a Sean Kemp reference. Man, when Dan Candress sees this, if he does, he's going to love you even more for that.
Oh, somehow in the music show Dan and I do together with my brother, we mention Sean Kemp every couple episodes, I think. So
Yeah.
he comes up, which
probably-
I mean, now that you're in the Northwest, you should be on that Sean Kemp bus.
Listen, it's hard to argue Sean Kemp is not one of the greatest dunkers of all time.
Agreed. I mean, his outside court stuff in his career, I mean, essentially ended his career. I remember watching him in Orlando. It's interesting that both him and Patrick Ewing both ended up in Orlando, 80 pounds too heavy to play. That
Yeah.
just
Listen, Orlando has this knack of like having big guys either early in their career or at the end of the career. I mean, you think about the big guys that come through Orlando, that, you know what I mean? It's kind of phenomenal that so many have come through you guys.
yeah, and even like look at McGrady. They had McGrady in the
Yeah.
early part of his career, and then he goes off and with Yao is otherworldly in Houston. Grant Hill got him at the wrong age. Vince Carter, it's crazy to think that was so late in his career since he went on to play for another 7 seasons, but Vince Carter was not Vince Carter, but they signed him like he was Vince Carter.
Yeah.
And then I think Dwight is the example that the prime of his career was in Orlando, but that shouldn't have been the prime of Dwight's career. Like he's another one who is off the court attitude and activities caught up to him, and that's why he washed in Orlando, washed in Houston, or washed in LA and washed in Houston, and couldn't make a roster for a little bit. So it's nice to see him revitalize his game as that off the bench guy who's going to give you tough minutes. But you think about a guy like Matt Barnes, who did a stint in Orlando too, but that's his whole career except for that fun Warriors team that upset the Mavericks. Matt Barnes was that gritty off the bench minutes guy, and I love Matt Barnes for that. There's a reason certain players, I mean, Kobe hated playing Matt Barnes for that reason. And I just love those guys who, even though they might not be the all-time stars, like fans of a team love these guys because they know what they're going to get from them.
Yeah, you can count on them, and they're going to show up and they're going to do what needs to be done.
Yeah. And I think Orlando, when they have those guys, they don't necessarily use them right, and they don't have the superstar to pair with them anyway because
Small market.
yeah, small market, and doesn't have a great history as a team in the league either.
Yeah.
Although sometimes I look at those players in that Eastern Conference championship team, like I'm like, wow, Stan Van Gundy overcoached a lot of those guys.
He did.
I mean, I know Jameer was hurt until the championship, but Jameer Nelson's career after Orlando was as a steady backup team leader guy. And those guys are great to have in the league, but he was a star in Orlando. I remember being at a game and they gave away Jameer bobbleheads, and a guy in front of me was just so excited. Like Jameer was his dude, and he got the Jameer bobblehead. He was wearing the jersey, and I'm just like, damn. I think, yeah, Stan, it's unfortunate he hasn't had the career post there. His Detroit dual row was a miss. New Orleans, I don't know that those players want to play for him, which is tough. Stan's not the easiest guy to play for. He likes to yell, I think, which is kind of funny because he got the best out of Dwight, but Dwight hated it. And I'm like, you needed that guy, Dwight. Like, and that's understandable. He was just so physically imposing that he didn't ever have to work. And now he was playing for a coach who demanded he work. But at the same time, no one had his players' backs like the way Van Gundy did. I always knew if there's a bad call or something, Van Gundy was going to rip the officials and get fined in a press conference so that none of the players had to do that. And I loved that as a coach.
Yeah. He's old now. You know, some of these old guys that, are still coaching or in the game, I feel like it's different for them. And I applaud some of these older coaches who have changed their coaching style or their strategies or techniques, because the players have without a doubt changed. The rules, how you go about things is so different nowadays than it was before.
And that's 100%. And I had hope for Van Gundy in New Orleans, and I guess it's not over yet. They haven't let him go. He might be coming back, but I had hopes for him because he was one of those guys who early embraced that 3-point revolution. He had two power forwards lining up behind the three, and sometimes a detriment. I loved watching Hidu Turkoglu, but there were nights he should not have been shooting. And I know he gets credit for, in that same Eastern Conference year, he gets credit for an 11 assist game to knock out the Celtics. But the crazy part about that is JJ Redick averaged 8 assists that series. JJ Redick played out of his mind that season. And I just think of the Adam Morrison comparisons when he was in college. And yes, Morrison has 2 rings because he sat at the end of the Lakers bench. But JJ's played meaningful play off minutes and Morrison didn't. And one of them is still somehow in the league and the other's not. And I think that's a testament to Stan Van Gundy. Knew Redick couldn't play in the NBA straight out of college, didn't force it. Whereas Morrison looked better as a rookie because where was he? He was in Charlotte and they forced him to play.
Yeah.
So Redick learned to develop, and you kind of forget that the guy is 6'4". I remember we'd go to the games early just to watch the guys goof off. Like Lewis and Hidu were so fun to just watch goof off on the sidelines during warmups. And one day it was Lewis and Hidu out at the 3-point line throwing alley-oops to JJ Redick.
You listen, I love doing that too. When you go to a game, I like getting in the arena as early as possible because you get to see a lot of stuff that you would never ever get to see any other time.
Yeah, and I like all live sports, but I think there's something about a basketball arena that just has a better energy.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And honestly, a live football game is always fun, but I think the football experience is still probably better viewing from home, like with some pals.
Oh, I would agree with that.
But I've only seen live football games in Buffalo, so maybe it's just not being a Bills fan in Ralph Wilson Stadium.
Yeah, there might be an element to that.
Watching guys get hot dogs thrown at them because they're in Dolphins starters jackets and then them get escorted out. It's just like, or a guy who shoved my mother because she's in a Cult starter jacket. That was a fun one. I thought I was going to end up in arena jail that night.
Oh, the little one's not happy right now. Oh.
Now, Coach Roy would have her running laps.
Listen, kids are different than players. Kids are different players. I don't coach my kids. I teach
Let them be kids.
Let them be kids. There's a lot in the world that they're going to experience. They don't have a lot of time to do that. But let them be young and let them have fun. Juju, come here. Come see. Come look. Come look. No, you don't want to come look. Oh, look. Guys, look, it's Reverend Dilcox.
Hi.
Hi. Do you want to show him your boo-boo? You got an owie? No? Okay. All right. Yeah. Oh, that's so snuggle. Okay. That's okay. Do you want to listen to us talk? We're talking basketball. No.
Only like 12 people want us hear us talk, so it's fine. This is for us. But I will let you be daddy here soon. I just have a question about the ratings seem to be a big topic. WNBA in the bubble, only sport that had ratings go up. And they got rid of conferences and altered their playoff format. Do you think that would work in the NBA as well?
Listen, I do. I think, the way the NBA, I'm not sure what the WNBA did for their format.
They went to, I believe it's top 4 teams get buys in the first round, or it's like the top 2 teams get the first 2 round buys and the 3 and 4 get buys for the first round, but then it's single game elimination for the early rounds. So every game is must watch, must win. And they also have a shorter season, but part of that is because unfortunately, female athletes don't make money in the US and have to play year round and play overseas. But yeah, only sport that grew, and a big part of it was you didn't get the top teams in the conference, you got the top teams in the league, which I think about a lot of those years in the East for the NBA.
Yeah. Oh, you a mama. Oh, look what we got here. You don't want some string cheese? No, what's the mom?
I will gladly take some string cheese.
Reverend Dilcox is going to eat it. Do you want it?
Can you have your cheese?
Eat it? No, you want your cheese?
No.
No, okay.
I do love hearing you call me Reverend Dilcox. I haven't heard it in so long.
That's who you're always going to be to me.
And probably for the right reasons. You guys were the first wedding I officiated. And I've done very few since because I'm trying to be selective about it. I did have someone recently ruin my 100% rate of couples staying together.
Oh.
And it happened within a year of this person's second marriage. So unfortunate there. But I had to let the streak go at some point so I could be carefree. And
listen, if he's already failed at one and he failed on two, a lot of that's on him, not so much you.
I agree. It was a beautiful ceremony, great reception. So there's that. I think, yeah, you guys with that first one.
That was epic.
Especially since I didn't realize how small the wedding was going to be. And Ashley told me, don't worry, you're invited to the wedding. Shortly after you guys had gotten engaged. And I was like, wait, I live with you guys. Why wouldn't I be invited to the wedding? And then I saw how small it was. And not only was I invited, but I got to stand up front with you guys.
Say hi? No? Okay. I'm almost done. Yeah. I got rolling. Yeah, dad duties. But anyway, back to your question about the WNBA. I think that's great because I think, everybody expects, certain teams to win, like the Nets beating the Celtics. Like, I don't imagine that's highly watched because everybody just assumes, the Nets are going to win. Whereas I think the NBA changing their playing games, for me, it made it more interesting as a viewer. I wanted to watch those games. So I think the WNBA is onto something really cool.
Yeah, I agree. And the playing games were really fun. I heard people complaining about the quality of a couple of the playing games, specifically in the East. But if you got rid of conferences, all of a sudden you've got just 500 teams playing in, and maybe it's Curry versus the Nets. And how great would it be to see Curry light up Kevin Durant for a series?
And if you beat him,
I think the underrated thing, I know Ja Morant talked about how important the play-in games were because it gave them something to play for, and then they ended up sneaking into the playoffs. And that's a young team that's getting essentially an extra month of playoff experience because every game is must win for them. And let's face it, as terrible as the Warriors were, if they weren't trying for that 10th seed and hoping they could sneak in, Curry doesn't play.
No.
I mean, Curry played sore and he played out of his mind. He went from not in the conversation to all of a sudden getting MVP votes because of how well he played in the second half of the season. And traditionally, he would have been shut down. He would have had like a sore knee that no one diagnoses and not played the last month. And instead, we got an all-time great performance from him. So, and that only happens because they were trying to get the 10th seed, and he played so out of his mind, they ended up in the 8th and unfortunately not making the play-in, but
yeah, I know. But I agree. I think that gives a lot of those teams that would, if they have stars or studs, they would say, we're going to rest and get ready, gear up for next year. Whereas now they have a chance, like, get in there, they can make some noise.
And the biggest complaint I ever hear from fans is, why would I go to a game if so-and-so star might not play that night and I'm not going to find out until game time? And if the games matter more because more teams have a shot at getting in that play-in, and if you shorten the season and give these guys more rest between games. I mean, it's insane the fact that they might play 4 games in a week. As And I get it at the high school level, you can do it, but these are professionals. This is their livelihood. Like, give them a bit of a rest. Give them a couple days between each game.
Yeah, and you want your best quality of basketball out there. You don't want, having games where your stars aren't playing because they've already played 3 games that week and they're playing a back to back, and you definitely don't want people injured. You know what I mean? That doesn't do anything for
Yeah.
your revenue.
And there's a give and take to it. I mean, I think San Antonio was that first team that made resting popular, but look at how long it extended Tim Duncan's career. And for San Antonio, when they get that 2-week road trip, when the rodeo, I mean, the
Yeah.
fact that the rodeo trip is a thing and that they might play 10 games on the road in 2 weeks is just,
It's absurd. It's
Yeah.
absurd.
and I get it. It's Texas. Like, they should be moving for the rodeo, but if you have less games, then maybe they're playing 5 games in 2 weeks in that stretch. And you don't need to rest your stars 3 nights on each trip. Like, and then you can charge more money when you know the stars are going to play, and you can charge more money when there's less advertising space. And I don't think that the executives see it that way. They see it like, oh, more games means more ad, but
Yeah.
less games means you can charge more for the ad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're
agree.
going to get more eyeballs on the product. So there's less ad space and more eyeballs on the product. The premiums are going to skyrocket for that.
Yeah, not to mention, when you're playing 82 games, let's be honest, how much of those games are meaningless that people just don't care because the first 2 months of the season, it's whatever.
Yeah. Especially if you're going west to east. Like, if you're playing the Orlando Miami back-to-back game, which is a regular one, you're going to play Miami. You're going to sit your guys in Orlando. That's what you're going to do.
Come say hi. No. Softball. All right, I got to get going. We got to get that time rolling. But real quick, who's your winner? Who you taking?
I mean, if AD is out and the Lakers don't make it past the Suns, I'm going to say the Bucks over Utah. I think if LA isn't available, that Utah has the bigs to match up with Denver, but they have the guards to match up with everyone else in the West. So I just see that path coming for Utah, which is great. I love Mike Conley. I would love to see him get his ring in the same year he finally gets his All-Star. But unfortunately, I have money on the Nuggets when they traded for Aaron Gordon. The odds looked good, so I put some money. So for my bank account, I want that $4,000 if the Nuggets win, which was great. That was only a $20 bet. So, but yeah, I think it's going to be Bucks in Utah. It's going to be tight, but I think Utah will probably win. But I could see it going any other way. But that all depends on injuries.
Yeah. I would be happy to see Bucks win it, and Utah, I could be happy if they win it. But I would like to see some team win it. It doesn't really do. See it.
I agree. There's just so much. I mean, I would have loved to see the Grizzlies make this epic run as a play-in and win it, but I don't see it. But I mean, Connolly is the spirit of the Grizzly if he wins it with that grit and grind. So
yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Roy.
All right. Thanks, Rev.
I will talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
I hope so.
All right. Love you and miss you.
All right. Love you. Miss you too, man. Take care.
Too.